So here is a block that I like to call a weave block. So this is an example of it where I make it with two different weave fabrics there, or ribbon fabrics. So I like to think of these as ribbons going across. And then here is a way that I do it with 4 different ribbons going across. And so I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. I have made this several times in other formats just for myself personally. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody do this on YouTube. And so hopefully this is going to be something that is new to you. So for this definitely uses jelly roll strips. You could also use layer cakes because there will be 2.5-inch squares out of this that happen. But I like to use the jelly rolls, and actually all of these were cut off of yardage, but this is very friendly to the commercial jelly rolls. So for this, I need to have a background or a negative space type of color strip, something like that. And then there's one way, I'm going to show 2 different ways of doing this. So there's one way where I only need like 2 different colors. And then there's another way where I'm going to have 4 different colors. I'm going to show both ways in this video. Out of the background strip, we need 2.5-inch squares. So this is the Stripology Mini by Creative Grids. And you don't have to have this. I just happen to find it very useful because I can cut things very fast. I do have the regular sized one, but for the purposes of this video, this mini works perfectly fine. You can also just do this with a regular ruler. I have a 2.5-inch ruler that works great. You can really just use any ruler that you want. So I need 2.5-inch squares of this background, and I will need 9 of these. I'm just going to cut those. So here's 4 of them because the strip is folded. And then I have a whole bunch that I cut off of another strip. What I was able to cut off of this entire strip was 16 squares, and the possibility of a 17th square if I needed it out of that fold area, and that's if I had everything cut real nice to where it didn't elbow, and so as you can see, that's a pretty straight type of a thing. So this would be usable if I press it open. So I'm going to go ahead and set that aside, because 20 strips will be plenty for what I need. I actually need 18 if I'm going to make 2 different blocks. So out of my larger strips, I'm going to go ahead and make up 2-color block out of these 2 strips, which is this indigo and this purple. And for that, I will need to make 1 cut that is a 2.5 and 1 cut that is a 6.5. So I'm going to go ahead and do the 6.5 first. Okay. So I have the 6.5-inch cut of both of those. And then I need the 2.5-inch cut here. And since I am going to use this in the other format where I'm showing 4 colors, I'm going to go ahead and just take the time to cut those. So now I have extra 2.5s of those, and that's fine. And then I just like to kind of separate them out as I go. And then I'll go ahead and cut that last 6.5-inch for that second block format that I'm going to show, which I would only need 1, and this is doubled up, so it's actually going to give me extra that is not used, but that is okay. So we have that, and then now I'm going to do that same thing with this blue and this green. Okay, so here we go. We have these 4 all cut into their units, and then I have my background squares. I'm going to make the layout here. And then the background would go there. Background would go there. And so this is roughly the layout here. And so let me see if I can just spread this out just a little bit. Okay, so it's a little jumbled looking here. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to stitch together these little 3-piece bits that are on the edges. And so I'm going to go ahead and show that. Okay, so now I have those 3-piece edges for all 4 of those sides. I've got those all stitched up. We have our pieces here, and so that means that this one will go next to a purple, this other one goes next to that purple, and then this goes next to the indigo, and this piece goes next to the other indigo. And so we want to stitch these longer ribbon sets to the 3-piece sets, and then that will make it so that we're prepped for being able to get to the final bit, which is going to be assembling the whole block with that central partial seam. And so if you'll notice, I am always pressing these seams in towards those ribbons. I'm doing that because it actually lays better that way, so I would end up doing that even if the background was dark and the ribbons were light. Now, of course, if you're really into pressing things open, you could do that with this. Personally, this is one of those blocks where I really feel like pressing to the side is the best option. Alright, so here we are, and I will want to go ahead and press these this way. This is the long continuous piece, and so naturally it would want to lay that direction anyway, and so that's part of why I do what I do with pressing like that in the first place. And so there we go, and so that's one of them. And ordinarily I like to just do this at the iron, but in the interest of saving some time for this demo, I'm just going to do it right here at the machine. But for me personally, whenever I'm working on stuff, I usually do stuff where I press it just because I really like to have a nice, crisp, pressed, and really flattened type of piece. So now that I have these, I can put that over in that corner, and then the same piece goes in the opposite corner, and then now I can put this one here and this one here, so it looks like that, and then this is my center piece. And so what I like to do is I will take this and I just put it over to this one because that's just how my mind works. And so I'm going to line that up. And so partial seams, they're very easy to do. Once you've done this a couple of times, it becomes old hat and you wonder why you were ever concerned about doing them. And so for this, I go about halfway down. I'm not going to mark it, I'm just going to estimate it. And then I'm just going to back tack. And that way, whenever I am doing the rest of the sewing on this, I'm not worrying about any of that coming apart. Okay. And then here's an important part of the pressing strategy. It would seem tempting to just do it like that because this is a short piece and it just seems maybe more logical that way, but that's not the way we want to do it. You want to always think of it that your long ribbon pieces are what you want to be pressing in towards. So you want to flip it over like I just did there, and then you want to press it this way, okay, and just do a finger press. And then now you're ready to go ahead and add the other seams. And so what I'm going to be doing, so here's the whole thing, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going clockwise. And so that one will be the next piece, and then this one, and then this will be the final one that gets attached. So I have that piece there, which is the first piece in the clockwise direction. So I like to have the ribbon piece on the bottom, and that's just to make sure that whenever I'm sewing this, that I don't have the foot make one of these seams go the opposite direction it needs to be. Okay, and so again, you want to always press, take that ribbon side up, and then you press it so that it's pressing in on itself. So you can see that it's actually going in towards the ribbon piece there. And so now we're going to take that third part of the clockwise direction, and we're going to line it up. Okay. All right, so now for the final piece. And so we need to have that in there. And so to do that, we're going to take this, we're going to line it up just like we did the others. Okay, so we're going to take that, line it up like the others, and then I'm flipping it over that way, and then I can just tuck that over there, and that works really well. So now if I can get the line up, there we go, okay. Okay. And then again, pressing that in that way. And this is where it became very important what we did at the beginning there, with making sure that that first thing was actually pressing towards the ribbon, because now this can just be folded over that way. See, that's folded. That can just be folded over that way. And then I can line this right up. And then I'm going to cue the needle up with where the end of that stitching was, where I back tacked. And then back tack again. And now I can just travel that right back up. And there we go. I'm going to press that, and then I will show you how to do 4 different ribbons. So here it is, that block. It looks great, and this measures to 10.5 inches square. So all of these are going to measure to that, and that's because we're using these 2.5-inch square increments. And so now what about if you want to make this a little bit more complicated and have a different fabric for each of these ribbons? So let's see how that would look. So just so I can transport this over, I'm going to put this down because it just makes life easier. So I'm putting that up there and that there. And so I'm putting my purple and my indigo are going to be the same direction. And then I'm going to have those that way. And then I'll have the green right here. Okay. So far, so good. And then we're, of course, going to have all of these squares. So we're going to have those going all around there. And so instead of getting them all together that way, since I know that I have to make these 3-piece units first, then I'm going to go ahead and just grab my squares and go ahead and do that. And then I will show you how to assemble this, because now that we have 4 ribbons, it's pretty easy to get this jumbled up if you don't take some steps to really keep it organized as you're going along. Okay, so we have it all laid out here. And so this is where it's important to keep it organized, because it's very easy for this to get out of order. And so to do that, you just want to take these, and so beforehand, you just make sure that you arrange these 3-piece sets exactly where they need to be so they line up with their ribbon counterparts. So, the indigo that way, the blue that way, etc. And then now you just want to take this, and see, before I didn't pen it because I didn't have to. It was only 2 colors. But in this case, I pen. And then that will keep everything in place. So line that up. All right. So we have that. And so now I can just sew these. Okay, and just like before, we're pressing them towards that long ribbon side. Okay, and so just like that. Now, if you do it this way, you really can't mess this up at this point, because all you have to do is you just look at your pieces and you see where you need to put things. And so you can see that this piece has the blue, so that means that these 2 are going to go like this. And then you can see that the purple is there, so that means that this piece has to go with that one. And then the green and this last piece right here. And so that last piece right there. And so in that way, I can go ahead and I can do the partial seam just like I did before, and I will have a completed block. All right, so here we are. This is the block. It's all finished up. And this right here is the block that we made first, where it was just the 2 ribbons. And then I went ahead and I made up another one of those 4 ribbon ones, and then I made it out of the other fabric as well. With the 2 that are this way, you could actually kind of team it up that way and have these go all nice and continuous for like a larger type of a thing. And of course, if you're going to do that, then definitely want to have a design wall. You want to be able to plan that out, have that figured out pretty well. But as you can see, you'd be able to do that. It would look really cool. So these obviously got sewn just a little bit slightly different. So, because you could see like the long purple thing on that one is right there, and it ended up on that side. So, here's all 4 of them right here. And so that looks pretty cool. Let's see if I can get just a little bit more space. Okay. So that looks pretty cool. If you want to get pretty complex, definitely you need a design wall, and then you can have your long ribbons going all the way across and make sure that you have everything planned meticulously that way. Or you could just use your scraps, and each one of these could just use up a scrap. You only need 9 inches for each one of these ribbons that goes across. That's an excellent way to use up your jelly roll scraps that you have from projects. A lot of times you might have like 9 or 10 inches left from a particular strip that you used on a previous project. And then, of course, you need a pretty good amount of the background squares. That can also be something from scraps. A lot of times we have light colored scraps, or if you're going to use gray, we might have a lot of gray tone scraps. So I hope this has been a fun block for you to consider. This is one of my more favorite blocks that I like to make over the years. Thanks for watching.